Van Radio Podcasts, getting you inspired to be fruitful.
Does leadership really matter? Does leadership really matter? My name is Samuel A. Bakutana. I am a certified executive coach, an award-winning leadership consultant, a global speaker and author. 16 books in the areas of leadership, business, education, and relationships. I am the CEO of Inspired Leaders International, and my passion is to develop leaders who are transformational, exemplary, and authentic worldwide. Now, we've heard this common statement by John C. Maxwell that everything rises and falls on leadership. And in this brief sharing today, we shall look at what critics of this statement say about it, what I see leadership being, what makes leadership really matter, the implication of all this to you as a leader, the consequences of this important truth to leadership teams, and then we will end by looking at what communities and institutions must start to do as a result of this important truth. So let's get back to our statement. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Now, the critics of this way of thinking believe that, first of all, this gives leadership too much importance, too much weight, too much strength. Why do you say everything? You know, it feels like a huge claim. It feels like an exaggeration. That everything rises and falls on leadership? So people who criticize this statement feel like this gives leadership too much importance. And then also, they feel that there are other factors that affect our world. You don't have to say, everything rises and falls on leadership. There are many other factors. Other things rise and fall on communication. Other things rise and fall on political environment. Other things rise and fall on emotional intelligence. Other things rise and fall on the availability of resources or lack thereof. There are other factors that affect our world. And others believe that leaders are most times even the cause of the trouble. So when we say everything rises and falls on leadership, are we forgetting that actually sometimes the leaders are the ones that are causing trouble? What do I say about these things? When you say there are other factors that affect our world besides leadership, of course there are. But what you are forgetting is that those other factors are also being influenced by someone, a leader, either in a position or just in function, without a title, without an office, without a position. Even those factors you are talking about, they are being influenced by somebody. And that somebody, as long as we say influenced, we are already talking about leadership. Or when you say leaders are most times the cause of trouble, yes, you're right. And actually, that's my point. That leaders determine not just the good, they also determine the bad. So, everything rises and falls on leadership. Now, in this case, we are looking at leadership as, number one, a person. Like you go in a place and you ask, who is the leader here? Who is the managing director? Who is the head of department? Who is your chairman? Who is the secretary? Who is in charge of this and that? You're actually asking for a person. So we are looking at leadership as a person, but also we are looking at leadership as a team of persons, team of individuals, a team of people. For example, when you say the board of governors, when you say the SMT, senior management team, when you say the committee in charge of. So there you're looking at leadership as a team. But we could also look at leadership as an ability. Whenever you ask people and you say, what is leadership? Many times they will rather say it is a team of people who are doing this and this, or leadership is someone who does this and this. No, many times they will say leadership is the capacity to. Then they will add many words. Or they will say leadership is the ability to, or leadership is the capability to do this and this. So yes, leadership is an ability to offer guidance, an ability to give direction, an ability to dispense inspiration, and many times many people add the component of direction, the component of an objective, that it is that ability to offer guidance towards a certain direction or rallying people, mobilizing people towards achieving a certain direction. I could as well say it is an action. Leadership is taking people, it's an action of taking people and taking institutions to a certain desired better future. So in this podcast, we are talking about a simple question: does leadership really matter? I would like to propose to you quite strongly that leadership actually matters so much. And I'm going to give you 10 reasons very briefly. Number one, leadership matters because it affects the morale or the attitudes of the team. Whenever you go to an institution, when you go to a company, when you go to an organization, and you find a team of workers, a team of people who are looking lazy, looking so demotivated, looking so sad, sorrowful, and so on and so forth, I can assure you most times, not all the time, but most times, they have picked that from their leader. Or maybe from their team of leaders. Because leadership affects the morale, it affects the attitudes of the team. A leader's attitude is very contagious. Are you enthusiastic as a leader? Most times, many people on your team will plug into your enthusiasm. Are you somebody who speaks sarcastically? You can be sure that many times the people on your team will start to speak sarcastically. Are you a respectful person as a leader? Many times the people you lead will pick that. They will also be respectful to one another, respectful to themselves, respectful to the clients, to the customers, respectful to the beneficiaries of your service, of your products. Because leadership affects the morale, it affects the attitudes of the people that you lead. If you are let me call it a free-spirited kind of person, as a head of department, most times you will start to see a number of people in your department loosening up a bit, professionally loosening up, becoming free-spirited, because they are they are plugging into the attitude of the leader. So leadership really matters because it affects the morale of the team. But secondly, leadership also matters because it affects the stability of an institution. It affects the stability of a community. It affects the stability of an institution. Some institutions are stable until they get a new leader. They are stable until they get new leadership. Then when they get new leadership, hell breaks loose. I remember 25 years ago when I lost my father. My dad died about 25 years ago this year. And before he died, our extended family was very strong. Our extended family was so united. People were working together. We had a lot of energy in the family and so on and so forth. But then when he died, it was like the pillar that was holding the extended family had just been removed. Conflict started to come up in the extended family. Hatred started to abound. People started to fight, and so on and so forth. So with hindsight now, I look back and realize that my father was a pillar that was holding the family together, the big extended family. He was a leader. He was a local council leader. Local council leader 1, local council leader 2. He was the chairperson of the Head Teachers Association in the whole district, and so on and so forth. He was a man who was a strong leader. Rest in peace, Emmanuel Bailon. So when he went away, then there was a disintegration. The stability was disturbed. The stability of the family institution. And I can tell you, it has been quite a long journey of trying to recover from that. 25 years. We are at a much better place today, but it took us some time. Why? Because the leader really determines the stability of the institution, the stability of the community, the stability of the association, of the club, of the nation, depending on the level of leadership. The nature of leadership will always determine whether the institutions and communities are stable or the people in those institutions and communities are living in fear and anxiety. Number 3, leadership really matters because it controls resource allocation. Where shall our pennies go? That's a question that is answered by the leader most times. Shall our pennies go to the systems building? Shall we put our money in people empowerment, in infrastructure development? Shall we focus on market penetration? Shall we focus on health and safety? Or shall we even focus on corruption and wastage? Leadership controls resource allocation. Number 4, leadership decides the organizational priorities. What shall we focus on? Recently, at Inspired Leaders International, we carried out a training for a senior management team of an international entity. And I remember during that time, it was a training for 3 days focused on strategic leadership. I remember one of those days, I think it was on the second day, the chief executive officer stood up in the midst of the training. He looked at his team directly in their eyes. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, next year, if we don't raise money, if we don't raise resources, we have no work. It was so unequivocal. It was so firm in the way he said it. And I could see in the room, people had gotten the message of the organizational priorities for the next year. A leader stood up and passionately proclaimed the priorities for the next year. So you can talk about consensus, you can talk about, people getting into meetings and deciding and talking and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the leader or the team of leaders, or collectively the leadership, will determine the organizational priorities. Also, leadership matters because it determines the quality of decisions made in a place, the quality of decisions that are made in an organization, in a nation. And you see, this is true because at the end of the day, the leaders influence what is decided upon. And as you know, decisions determine the destiny. So leaders determine the quality of decisions made in a nation, in an organization, and then those decisions will determine the destiny of that company, of that institution, of that club, that community, of that nation. Number 7, leadership matters because it gives meaning to activity. It gives meaning. Have you ever been under a leader who removed meaning out of work? Who removed meaning out of the things you were doing? Maybe he comes and he says, well, you people are here just warming up chairs. And you feel like I should resign today. Or a leader comes up, finds you doing work, or you produce that report and you place it on his table. He looks through, flipping and flapping, the papers. And then after looking at that report you have laid on his table, or the periodic update, or whatever it is, a quarterly report, he just trashes it. He says, this is nonsense. What is this that you have just brought to my table? You know that you have nothing to bring to my table. Don't come back here. I don't have time to waste on these kinds of things. Poor quality report. Don't bring this back to my table. And do you know how that can, remove meaning out of your work? Instead of guiding you, instead of equipping you, instead of mentoring you, instead of empowering you, instead of motivating, inspiring you, showing you what to do, he removes life out of you. No wonder John Maxwell, again, whom we are quoting today, no wonder he said that a leader is someone who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. So leadership gives meaning to activity. A good leader will put meaning into people's activity, even the menial thing. I remember I had a story of this cleaner who was at NASA, in the US, that station, and during the 60s, the 1960s. And when they were coming to launch, some satellite, this cleaner was in the compound cleaning, and I think it was the president, was it John F. Kennedy or one of those presidents then, found her and asked, what are you doing? Remember, this was a cleaner. And this cleaner saying, I am putting a man on the moon. Because this lady knew that what she was doing was not just cleaning, not at all. Instead, she was part of a team that was putting a man on the moon. So her cleaning was to ensure that the place where all these machines are being assembled, where these people are meeting from, is clear enough to give them a good environment that gives them a good way of thinking, bringing together wonderful ideas, so that this one big grand objective of the institution of NASA had to be fulfilled. You know, that person had a good leader, a leader who put meaning into her activity, an activity like just sweeping the compound. So the good leader focuses people on the big picture, and that's why leadership matters, because if people don't focus on the big picture, then they will lose direction and sense. Number 8, leadership is important because it also impacts on the organizational culture. When I talk about organizational culture, I am talking about how things are done here. This is how we do things. This is how things are done here. This is how we dress. This is the time we report. This is how we speak. This is how we treat the customer. This is how we produce our materials. This is how we travel. This is how we deal with one another. All that put together is culture, organizational culture. I can assure you leadership impacts on the organizational culture more than any other factor. And you know, as management guru Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. You may have this wonderful strategic plan. I mean, we help people to, and institutions to make their strategic plans for 3 years, for 5 years, for 10 years, and so on and so forth. And you find that you have come up with an awesome strategy. Oh my, oh my. You look at it and you feel like, yes, the world is going to be taken over. Market penetration is going to be top notch. Whatever it is you are focusing on in your strategic plan, maybe visibility and influence, maybe mobilization and whatever it is, resource mobilization, whatever it is that you are focusing on in the strategic plan. So you find you have that strategic plan, it is in place, it has gone through months and months of preparation. You have consulted many different stakeholders. You have consulted the staff members. You have consulted the beneficiaries of your product or your service. You have consulted the board. You have had meetings with political leaders. Maybe that's part of what you do. You have brought all these different stakeholders together and you have put together a wonderful strategy. Wonderful strategic plan. But let me tell you, if the organizational culture is not supportive of the strategic direction you want to take, your strategic plan has died on arrival. Culture, how we do things here. And you see, the leader is the one who determines the culture. He impacts on the culture. So we need leadership because we need supportive culture for our different strategies. You see? But also, second last, leadership really matters because it injects order in the society, injects order in the environment, it injects order in the community, injects order in the institution, in the nation. And this is out of the leader's ability to coordinate, the leader's ability to organize, the leader's ability to guide. Where this ability to guide is lacking, is in shortage, then the opposite is chaos. That's where you see strikes in different places, very many demonstrations. Remember, we have said everything rises and falls on leadership. So when we say everything, we mean both the good and the bad. Whenever you see something positive happening, there is a leader behind it. And whenever you see something wrong happening, equally there is a leader behind it. I remember many years ago when I was still in high school, something happened. There was a strike in that high school. And nearby the school, there were staff quarters. There was one of these teachers who was living near the school. And when a strike happened, the students ran out of the school. They were running into the community because the police had come to disperse the students. They came near his house and he opened one of his windows, looked outside and asked, "Hey, students, what is happening?" And they said, "Teacher, a strike has happened at school." And he raised his voice and he said, now you see, now you are real men and women. That's a teacher making a comment about students who are striking. That now they have become real men and women, you see. So that tells you that where he was standing, he was in support of strikes happening in the school. He was a leader behind it. A teacher is a leader. He influences the thinking patterns of the students. So leadership matters because it injects order in the society. And the opposite of this is disorder, e.g. unplanned infrastructure in the city and so on and so forth. And finally, leadership really matters. It's very important because it is a critical factor in the availability of the necessary services. Whether there is abundance or shortage of education, whether there is abundance or shortage of health services, whether there is abundance or shortage of security, etc. It's largely a factor of what kind of leadership we have at different levels in different environments. So leadership determines the progress and development of a community or its stagnation and poverty. So friends who are listening to me, you need to know that leadership is a very powerful tool. It matters a lot. And as we almost come to the end of this podcast, I want us to ask ourselves, so what is the implication of all this to you as a leader, first of all? The implication is threefold. First of all, you need to know that your opportunity to lead is not just an opportunity, it is also a responsibility to serve. So whenever you get a leadership position, please know that it's not just an opportunity for you to feel big, for you to be great. No, it's an opportunity. It's an obligation for you to lead, to serve. It is a responsibility. But also, secondly, start to take your position as a platform for doing good, for taking good action, for taking positive action. And thirdly, why don't you start to use your leadership for impact, to impact lives, not to just impress them. That you speak good English, that you dress very well, that you have a master's in business administration, that you have a PhD in this and that. It's not about impressing, it's about impacting. And how about if we are not talking about just you as an individual, but we are talking about a leadership team, you as a leadership team, because you could be a board of governors, a prefectorial body, a council, a senior management team, a parliament, a board of directors, a cabinet, a guild government, and so on and so forth. If you are a leadership team, you need to know that your decisions are not a mere matter of tick here, tick there, and so on and so forth. Your decisions are a matter of cause and effect. You will cause a certain effect on the institution, on the nation, on the organization. You also need to remember, as a leadership team, as a board of governors, as a board of directors, as a senior management team, as a country management team, that your collective action can actually end up becoming a betrayal of those that entrusted you. Ensure that your collective action gives you a vote of confidence before the people that you lead, and avoid the conspiracy of collusion. Conspiracy of collusion. Sometimes people agree together to fleece or defraud those that they lead. Why don't you instead start to agree together as a board, agree together as a council, agree together as a senior management team to be a huge asset to the people you lead, to the institution you lead, not a liability. And finally, how about the rest of us who are being led? What must the communities and the institutions start to do as a result of this understanding? Whenever we have an opportunity to determine our leaders, let us take it seriously going forward. If you are voters at any level, you can sell your association, you can sell your country in a blink of an eye. But you can choose to vote for leaders who understand the issues, who have a solid plan for the future, and who have a proven record of reliability in executing that plan. And the day you find yourself on an interview panel, choosing leaders of an institution, please remember that your choice will be part of your legacy. So they will be asking, did you hire the right leaders during your time on that panel? If you are the appointing authority, remember that your decision can build generations, or your decision can actually destroy generations. And if you are the CEO, you are the managing director, you are the group chairman, and so on and so forth, ensure that you invest in developing leaders for your institution. So in conclusion, leadership is a very serious thing. It affects morale and attitudes of the team. It affects the stability of an institution or a community or a nation. It controls where resources will be allocated. It decides the priorities of the organization or the nation. It determines the momentum to work. It determines the quality of decisions made in a place, in an organization, in a nation. It gives meaning to work. It gives meaning to activity. It impacts on the organizational culture. It injects order in the society, and it is a critical factor in the availability of the necessary resources or the necessary services. It is too serious to be handled. It is too serious not to be handled seriously, whether it is by the one leading or by those who are following or those who are determining who leads them. So truly, everything rises and falls on leadership. And the hard reality of this truth is very hard to ignore. Leadership truly matters.
Thank you for listening to Vine Radio Podcast. Hope you are inspired. Now get out there and be fruitful.